Shadows over Kansas City. Part 1. The Vacuum of Power. Mid-January 1926. Kansas City, Missouri, a city in turmoil. The bitter January wind cut through the city streets, a city gripped by uncertainty. The crisp winter air cut by the acrid smoke of industry and the acrimony of organized crime. With Salvatore Carlucci dead, a power vacuum had opened, and every faction, gangsters, mobs, and street thugs alike, scrambled to seize control. The death of Carlucci, the undisputed kingpin of the city's underworld, had left a gaping hole in the criminal hierarchy. Rival factions clawed at each other for dominance, while the streets buzzed with rumors of betrayal, opportunity, and unchecked ambition. Johnny Hammer Volcano, once an enforcer, was reportedly rallying the scattered remnants of Carlucci's organization, aiming to unite them under his iron fist and seize control of the city's criminal empire. Inside the department, Fletcher's replacement had been appointed. Captain Peter Eldridge was an anomaly in the Kansas City Police Department, a fresh face untainted by the corruption that had plagued its ranks for years. Hired from Omaha, Nebraska, Eldridge was young for his position, barely in his mid-30s, with sharp features, a neatly trimmed mustache, and a posture that suggested both confidence and determination. Though Omaha had its share of crime, it lacked the deeply entrenched mob ties and old-school crime families that ruled Kansas City. Eldridge's first impression of his new post was one of chaos, but he approached it with a calm pragmatism, knowing he would need to learn fast if he was to survive in this turbulent environment. During his initial briefing with Garwood and Detective O'Malley, Eldridge had admitted as much. "Gangsters and common criminals are different animals," he had remarked, his Midwestern accent tinged with curiosity. "In Omaha, we had bootleggers and bank robbers, but here, the crime feels personal, organized. It's like the city itself is feeding off the violence." Garwood, ever the realist, had given him a curt nod. "You're right, Captain. It's different here. And if you're going to lead this department, you'd better learn fast. The gangs and mobs won't give you time to catch up." Eldridge had taken the warning seriously. He quickly aligned himself with the special investigators sent by the governor to oversee the department's reforms, a no-nonsense figure named Marshall Hayes. Hayes was older and grizzled, with the demeanor of a man who had seen everything and had no patience for excuses. Together, Eldridge and Hayes began systematically identifying and removing officers with ties to Kansas City's crime syndicates. The task was monumental. Corruption in the department wasn't just a few bad apples, it was the soil itself. Hayes provided the muscle and political clout to enforce reforms, while Eldridge offered a fresh perspective and a willingness to take risks. It was a precarious partnership, but it worked. Garwood observed the new captain with cautious optimism. Eldridge's commitment to learning the city's dynamics and his determination to clean house were promising. He had already removed several officers who had been on Carlucci's payroll, and though the department still struggled with its reputation, the tides were beginning to turn. Eldridge wasn't naive, and Garwood respected that. The question that lingered in Garwood's mind was whether Eldridge's idealism could endure the weight of Kansas City's realities. The captain's inexperience with the deeply rooted mob culture worried him. This was a city where alliances were bought, loyalty was fragile, and danger came from every shadow. Still, as Eldridge had pointed out during one of their meetings, sometimes it takes an outsider to see the cracks in the foundation. For now, Garwood was willing to give him a chance. With Fletcher still on the loose and Johnny Hammer Volcano making his move, Eldridge's resolve would be tested sooner than anyone expected. Kansas City, already steeped in corruption and decay, stood on the brink of implosion. Amid the chaos, Detective Beauregard Tecumseh Garwood crouched in the upper floor of an abandoned metalworks building, peering through a pair of binoculars. Beside him were Detective Fitzgerald Fitz O'Malley and Officer Cosner Davis, their breaths clouding the frigid air as they watched the sprawling lumber yard below. The skeletal remains of the building groaned faintly in the winter wind, its broken windows offering a clear view of the yard below. Rumors swirled that Johnny Hammer Volcano, one of Carlucci's most brutal enforcers, was rallying the remaining members of Carlucci's organization. The lumberyard was said to be his headquarters, where he plotted to unite the scattered remnants of the gang and rise as the new kingpin of Kansas City's criminal underworld. The lumber yard was a sprawling maze of stacked timber and dilapidated office shacks. A single lantern flickered faintly in the distance, casting long shadows across the snow-dusted ground. It was early Saturday morning, and the three men were staking out the yard, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man rumored to be orchestrating the city's next great crime wave. Garwood shifted slightly, adjusting his coat against the cold. "He's bold if he's making moves this fast," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Bold or desperate," O'Malley replied, his binoculars trained on the yard. "Either way, we can't let him get a foothold." Garwood didn't respond immediately, his eyes locked on a faint movement in the yard, a stray dog sniffing its way through the piles of wood. He lowered the binoculars with a sigh. If he's smart, he's not going to show his face while every crook with half a brain is out gunning for his spot. Cosner huffed quietly, his revolver resting in his lap. "Still nothing. If he's here, he's not showing his face tonight. You sure this is the place?" O'Malley whispered, his Irish lilt carrying a faint edge of skepticism. He pulled his overcoat tighter around his lanky frame, shifting uncomfortably on the cold metal floor. "Rumors don't come with blueprints, Fitz," Garwood replied quietly, his stormy gray eyes fixed on the yard below. "But Hammer's not stupid. If he's rebuilding Carlucci's operation, he's doing it from somewhere out of sight." Cosner adjusted his gloves, his youthful face pale in the cold. "You think he's got the pull to make it work? Taking over Carlucci's crew?" "Ambition's never in short supply," Garwood murmured. "But ambition without control is suicide. He'll make a move, just a matter of time." Cosner nodded, his youthful enthusiasm tempered by the hours of bitter cold and tense silence. Garwood exchanged a glance with O'Malley, who scoffed. "Takes more than a nickname and a bad attitude to run this town. But if he's got the muscle and the money, anything's possible." O'Malley snorted, brushing frost from his binoculars. "He'd better move quick. With Eldridge and Hayes breathing down the department's neck, even the rotten cops are on their best behavior for now." Garwood's lips tightened into a grim line. This was a fleeting opportunity to push back against the darkness. He knew this was as good a time as any to bring justice to the streets. Still, Fletcher's escape remained a shadow over the force. The former captain had vanished into thin air, leaving behind more questions than answers. The three men waited as the hours stretched on, the chill seeping into their bones. The city was quieter than usual, as if holding its breath. Garwood, stretching his stiff shoulders, glanced at the others. "We'll try again tonight. He'll make his move sooner or later. Just have to be ready." When dawn began to streak the sky, pale and gray, the three men retreated. No sign of Hammer, no movements in the yard. They would try again, and again, and again, for however long it might take. Outside the Metalworks building, Garwood, O'Malley, and Cosner parted ways. Cosner, ever loyal, walked with Garwood toward his apartment. As they walked through the empty streets, Garwood pulled his coat tighter against the morning chill. His injuries still ached from the battles of the past months, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the burden of his double life. Only Cosner knew the truth, that Garwood's apartment was a front, and that he secretly lived with his wife Marie and their daughter Katie. "How's Olivia settling in?" Cosner asked, after a long stretch of silence. Garwood sighed, his breath clouding the air. "She's struggling. Losing her parents like that, she's crumbling on the inside. She doesn't talk much. Nightmares keep her up most nights." He shook his head. "I'm worried, but I'm hopeful. Maybe time will help." They reached a street corner a few blocks from Garwood's apartment, and Cosner hesitated. Garwood arched a brow. "Something on your mind?" Cosner scratched the back of his neck. "There's this diner a few blocks the other way. Roseanne Carpenter works there. I might have taken an interest." Garwood's expression softened, and a rare smile touched his lips. Well, Officer Cosner's got himself a girl. Go on then. Don't let me keep you." Cosner hesitated again. "Any advice?" Garwood chuckled. "Just don't get yourself killed trying to impress her." Garwood clapped the younger man on the back. "Go on then, but take it slow, and if you're smart, don't talk about work. Let her see you, not the badge, at least at first." Cosner grinned, tipped his hat, and walked off, leaving Garwood to continue toward his apartment. Garwood was a block from his apartment when a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Thaddeus Gerard, his hair disheveled and his face red with anger, marched toward him with purpose. "You lied to me," Thaddeus said, his voice shaking. "Where's Olivia? What's the address in Cincinnati?" Garwood's heart sank. He hated the lie, but knew it was necessary to protect Olivia, who was secretly living with his family. "Thaddeus," Garwood said evenly, "this isn't the time. I deserve to know," Thaddeus shouted, his frustration boiling over. Garwood ignored him and climbed the stairs to his apartment. Thaddeus followed, his protests growing louder. "Tell me where she is," he demanded, grabbing Garwood's arm. The boy's grip was weak, but it was enough to test Garwood's patience. The young man's face was flushed with frustration, his eyes burning with determination. "You promised, Garwood," Thaddeus hissed, stepping into the detective's path. "I need that address in Cincinnati. I have to see Olivia." Garwood's jaw tightened. The lie he, Marie, and Cosner had spun to protect Olivia was thin, but it had to hold. Telling anyone the truth, especially someone as volatile as Thaddeus, could put her life in danger. "You need to let it go, Thaddeus," Garwood said, his voice firm but calm. "This isn't the time." Thaddeus clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. "I'm not a kid, Garwood. I deserve—" As if not even knowing how to finish his own sentence, Thaddeus shoved Garwood hard. The detective didn't move. His patience, however, had reached its limit. Without a word, Garwood turned and delivered a thunderous blow that sent Thaddeus sprawling onto the floor of his apartment. Garwood grabbed the boy by the collar, lifting him to his feet. "Listen to me," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "I have to protect her, even from you. You want to see her? You earned that trust. Come back tonight, and we'll talk. But until then, control your temper, or you'll never be ready." Garwood's stormy gray eyes were blazing. "You want to protect Olivia? Start by controlling yourself." He threw Thaddeus out into the hall and slammed the door. For a moment, he leaned against it, his breathing heavy. Later, Garwood slipped out of his apartment and returned to his real home. The smell of frying bacon greeted Garwood as he entered his house. Marie stood at the stove, her black curls cascading down her back, while Katie sat at the table, her feet swinging as she hummed a tune. Marie turned, her amber eyes lighting up when she saw him. "You're home early." Garwood smiled, unable to hide his admiration. "Couldn't stay away." Katie squealed with delight and ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his legs. "Papa." "Hey, sweetheart," he said, lifting her onto his hip despite the ache in his muscles. Marie joined them at the table, instructing Katie to bless the food. The 4-year-old bowed her head, her tiny voice earnest in prayer. For a moment, Garwood felt a rare peace, the wildness of the streets held at bay by the love within these walls. For a moment, the wild world outside felt far away. Over breakfast, Garwood asked about Olivia. Marie's smile faded slightly. "She's sleeping now, but it was a rough night. The nightmares won't let her go." "She's trying, Beau, but—" Garwood nodded solemnly. "She's strong, stronger than she knows. With time, she'll find her way." Garwood reached across the table, taking Marie's hand. "I'll talk to her later. She'll get through this. We'll make sure of it." After breakfast, Garwood kissed Katie's forehead and told Marie to wake him in the evening. As he retreated to bed, he knew he had promises to keep, and as the city descended further into turmoil, he knew the fight for justice was just beginning. Promises to Thaddeus, to Olivia, and to the city, far beyond the walls of the Garwood's home, far removed from Olivia sleeping down the hall, as Garwood prepared for sleep himself. Far beyond the kitchen where Katie played quietly as Marie worked, a world away from the warm corner booth where Cosner sat pretending to drink a cup of coffee. Someone else had also made a promise that their peace would be short-lived, and they would pay.